Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen. All right, everyone, welcome back to Nets in the Water, Stoking the Flame of Catholic Education. Really excited to be back here. We are back with the co-host, Shevin. Shevin, say hey to the people. It's
Very
big.
thankful to be here. Stoking the what was it? Stoking the flame of
Catholic Education.
Oh, that's fun. Is that a new thing?
No.
It's been here for a while. I just got to wake up.
There you go.
Got to wake up. I work here. I think I work here. Okay.
No. But yeah, it is new that I'm starting the podcast by saying that. So you were onto something there.
Okay,
that wasn't
gotcha.
a very good yes and there. I didn't yes and you at all there.
I'm tracking. Are we going to talk about my leather jacket?
We're going to get there in a minute.
Okay.
First, very special guest sitting in front of me.
Totally.
Kelly Kearney, principal of Corpus Christi
Yes.
Catholic School.
So
in
glad
Temple
to be here
Terrace.
today. So happy to be here. Thank you. Thank you for
Oh
this
my
honor.
gosh. No, thank you. This is very exciting. Yeah, today we're going to be getting into a little bit about what is the point of Catholic education. It's Catholic Schools Week right now while we're filming this. We're releasing it during Catholic Schools Week. And the goal is to just talk about, like, all right, what actually makes Catholic schooling important? Why not just go to public school? Like, isn't it cheaper? Whatever. We'll get into that. If anyone at home is noticing, Shevin has a leather jacket on. That's big. It's a fun
It's
note.
amazing, too. I
Side
got to tell
note.
you, the leather jacket, I noticed it first thing.
Yeah, no, it's big.
Amazing.
I'm so glad we're talking about this. We are here to talk about Catholic education. I dress like an 8th grader. For Christmas, my wife brought me this leather jacket. It was very nice. I haven't taken it off, I think, in 2 months. It's from a Mongolian horse. That's how they make jackets.
That's true.
Interesting.
And that's true.
Yeah.
Unless there's some glaring, like, conservative, like, conservation issue.
Yeah.
With it. Maybe you just made yourself a criminal. Maybe Mongolian horses are like.
I couldn't tell you if Mongolia is still a real place. I will say I am very thankful that I got this jacket, and that's all, because we're not here to talk about a jacket.
No, but we decided to touch that base. We might even cut that from the podcast, but it's just like
Yeah.
for our own peace of mind.
More jacket talk would be great at some point. Yeah.
But it's
I
like,
would enjoy that.
There's an elephant in the room. Like,
Or we just lean into it. You did like it.
I
top
did.
5 reasons
Yeah.
to wear a leather
Yes.
jacket.
Yes.
No more
Okay.
Catholic
Yes,
education.
exactly.
Stoking the flame of leather jacket.
But let me point out that you probably could not wear that at a Catholic school necessarily.
Oh, and there's the
Yeah.
pivot.
Wow,
There you go.
Good pivot.
There's
There
the
you
pivot.
go.
Okay.
Okay, good. Thank you for that.
Well, yeah, to get into it, first off, before anything, what was kind of your journey to Catholic education? How'd you get here? What's going on?
It's been a long kind of disjointed journey. And I say that, but really I started in Catholic youth ministry 100 years ago. I mean, that was kind of my path to Catholic education. For me, very early on, probably by the time I was 6 or 7, there were 2 things I knew I would be. One was a teacher and the other was a mother. I just knew. I was absolutely, completely convinced. And so my path to education, to actually being in a Catholic school, took a little bit of a long route because I found in high school really drawn into Catholic youth ministry, very involved in youth ministry in high school. And so that was kind of my natural path. So I served in parish youth ministry for many, many, many years. And then just along the way, there was a shift and got into Catholic school as a campus minister and then moved into administration. So, sitting here today, I always laugh with people because if you had asked me even 15 years ago if I was going to be a elementary school principal, I would have just laughed in your face because who wants that job, right? Who wants to be a principal? But I love it, and I love Catholic education and cannot imagine myself doing anything else.
Wow. So when you were 6 or 7, were you like, okay, I'm going to be a Catholic teacher or just a teacher in general?
Just a teacher.
Okay.
Just a teacher, yes.
Because you mentioned 12, 13, you started doing youth ministry.
Right.
Between that 6 and 13, was there did you have a conversion to reversion, like a deepening of faith, I should say? Or were you always maybe you're just always a saint?
Yeah,
born
that
saint.
is very true, John. However, in my humility, I like to tell a different story. No, really, cradle Catholic as the term goes, and so our Catholic life was just very important in our family. So I'm not one of those people who can give you a real strong conversion story. I don't really have one. My faith has always been extremely important to me. So through middle school and into high school, I did not go to Catholic school. My parents moved to Plant City actually when I was in 2nd grade, and it just was impossible for them to keep us in Catholic school. I went to Catholic school for kindergarten and 1st grade. The story goes, my brother was in his senior year at Tampa Catholic, and he was allowed to stay there and graduate. So the story goes that it was obvious my parents loved him more than the rest of us because they made us go to public school. But I think the experience watching what my brother had, and he was about 9 years older than me. So, but I had that experience of seeing what he had in a Catholic school and watching the difference of experience. I would say it was probably by about middle school, 8th grade or so, where I said, my kids, when I have them, because again, I knew I was going to have kids at some point, they're going to be going to a Catholic school. I want that for my children. And so I think that kind of started me on that path, knowing that that was super important to me.
It sounds like that realization too came from a marriage of like you recognized the more like earthly benefits of a Catholic school, as well as to kind of start here, the spiritual benefits of a Catholic school. Like there's kind of the two-sided coin, because you don't want to under-spiritualize it and be like, oh, well, a Catholic school is good college prep, because it's more than that.
Right.
But also you don't just want to be like, oh, well, you get to pray before class, because it's also more than that.
Right.
But to start there, like Christ is at the center of a Catholic school. That's like the foundation of it. Correct.
And I think too, for me, unfortunately, my experience in public school, experienced it a little negatively almost. Just what I was missing so desperately, that my church life could not be brought into my school life. My spiritual life could not be a part of that. And, growing up in Plant City, back in that day, it's not that way anymore, but back then it was very Protestant oriented. And so it was a little bit of a struggle to be a Catholic kid in public school in that area. And so I didn't fully understand that at first. And so I think that's what also helped me realize the gift of Catholic school and how important that would be for my family to come.
Yeah. And I think that kind of leads really well into your first point of why Catholic education matters, is that it is unapologetically and overtly like Christ-centered and Catholic.
100%. It is there. Catholic schools are Catholic schools first. There are so many great benefits to being in a Catholic school, but if that is not the very center and main mission of a Catholic school, then, I would say they can't call themselves Catholic. That Catholic identity, that being centered on Christ, has to be the most important thing you're doing every single day, both overtly and just, internally, like as a part of everything that's going on in the classroom and beyond. It's got to be external. It's got to be internal. It's got to be just centered, the center part of your mission of everything you do.
And what does that look like practically speaking?
Of course, I think, it's prayer. Prayer is a regular part of the school day in a Catholic school. And it's not just, hey, we're praying in the morning. It's morning prayer. It's the Angelus. It's the afternoon prayer. It's doing that act of contrition at the end of the day. Hey, let's take a look at our day. How did we do today? It is liturgical. It is looking at those important moments throughout the liturgical year, Lent and Advent, and doing those special things during those seasons. It's recognizing the months of Mary, October and May, and doing special things in those seasons.
Great.
It's offering the sacraments, that our kids can receive the Eucharist at least once a week, when we're going to Mass weekly as a whole school, and then, offering those opportunities for the Sacrament of Reconciliation and, all of these things that are just a part of the normal daily life of the school.
Yeah, I think there's such a value too in instilling into the students that this is a part of daily life.
Correct.
Like from a young age, they're learning that like, oh no, during my day I pray. During my day I think about what's going on in a spiritual context. During the day, like we have these conversations that even outside, like whether or not you realize it at that age, it almost becomes weird when you don't do it afterwards. It's like, wait, I'm going to class and I'm not praying first. It like throws you for a loop.
Right. And that's what's so great, because, if a teacher just somehow manages to just be busy or just really maybe outside of themselves at that moment, and they forget to start a class with prayer or something, 9 times out of 10, there's going to be a student that reminds them, hey, we didn't pray yet, which is awesome.
So with that being said, that's kind of where my head goes. If I'm a principal and I want to strengthen or amplify the Catholic identity at my school, we all know there's really no replacement for the Eucharist, the living Word. There's things that how helpful they are. How helpful they are, And John was asking, like, practically, what does that look like? You start and pray, and you do the Angelus, and you have your months of Mary. If there was one, what practice have you seen during your time at a principal that when you implemented it, what spiritual practice did you implement where you started to see maybe a deepening of the faith, a strengthening of the faith? Maybe people were more vocal about it. I didn't know if there was one, like, oh, Chev, yeah, it's morning prayer. Maybe it's a collection of things, but I'm just curious because those things you said, they were all great. I'm like, I wonder if there's one that kind of really...
I do think it's a collection of things, but if I had to narrow down one that has been the most visible and that the kids, I think, relate to the most, and I know this may not seem like a huge thing, but we really tried to institute good music in our liturgies, okay? And although it may seem like a small thing, the way music can transform the celebration of the Eucharist for kids is huge. And so over the past several years, as I've seen that kind of grow and develop, and yesterday, gosh, what a blessing, our Sunday Mass at the parish was our Catholic School's kickoff Mass, and so many of our school kids were there. So we had the full choir there at a weekly Sunday Mass, and it's just incredible. I mean, I can't tell you how many times you will have grandparents, parents at those weekly Masses, teachers, administrators, just almost not quite to the point of sobbing, but the tears, you cannot help but feel the Spirit's presence because those children are praying so well through music. It's just completely moving. And I know without a doubt, because I've worked with kids my whole adult life, right? I know without a doubt that is drawing them deeper in, and that is drawing them closer to God. We've given them one more avenue to kind of build on that relationship with Christ, and you can see it and you can feel it. It's palpable.
Yeah, I mean, so first and foremost, why Catholic education? It's Christ-centered. It's Catholic.
Christ-centered, 100%.
Baseline.
Absolutely.
Now, on the flip side of that coin, we were talking about these main two aspects. We're going to get to the other five, but as the second one here, it's like the academic rigor of it,
right.
Kind of the environment.
Right. Exactly. Catholic schools, you can Google the statistics if you want. It's no secret. Our Catholic schools are doing better for our kids. It's just the reality. Academically, even behaviorally, new research has proven that what the discipline that these kids learn in our Catholic schools is lasting them well into adulthood and is helping them be good workers, have a great work ethic, all of these things. But that rigor, it's there. We want them to learn. We want them to think critically. We want them to be able to, I tease, especially grandparents. When grandparents come for Grandparents' Day, I said, I'm telling you right now, our Catholic school kids are going to be ruling the world in about 20 years. Because we're seeing this lack of ability to think critically. We're seeing a lack of resilience in kids nowadays that are graduating from high school and from college, and that's something we really want to emphasize with our kids is that you have to work hard. We're gonna challenge you. We're not gonna make it easy for you every year. And this is really, I don't want to badmouth public schools because there's a lot of good things going on in public schools, a lot of great public school teachers, but the fact is that it's just different. And so we will see, kids come to Catholic school from the public school and they will be a full year behind where they should be on the standards and the benchmarks. And so it takes them some time to get a little bit caught up. But we're going to push them. We're going to push them to be their best. We're going to push them to do their best always. And expect the best out of them. And if they need help, we're going to be right there to help them. Yeah. But to absolutely not to raise those expectations, to have high expectations, because everybody, we want these kids to reach to their highest potential and not just mediocrity. We want to push them to be their very best.
Now, as of maybe a pushback to this, my first thought when I read it, the statistics you shared, I think you have them in front of you. What were the statistics that were there?
So a couple that I have is 99% of students who graduate from Catholic schools go on to, or 99% of Catholic school students graduate from high school. And that is a much higher percentage than public schools or even other private schools.
Got it.
Yes. And I think it's something like 85%.
Okay.
Yeah, 85% go on to college, which, and that percentage for public school kids and other private schools is much lower too.
So my first thought about this is, who's to say that this is causation and not correlation? Meaning
Right.
that, like, a Catholic school parent cares enough to pick out a school for their kid, cares enough to pay money for it, is probably more involved in the kid. If they're paying money for it, there might be a more well-off family, maybe more resources around them. How much can you attribute to the Catholic school versus how much is just the
Right.
types of kids who are in Catholic schools are the types of kids raised in environments where high school is a bare minimum graduation from there. College is expected. How do you balance? Like, how do you kind of
I
combat that?
think at one point in history, maybe you could have made that correlation, that it's really, it's hard to look at these statistics as not being, well, that's the type of kid that's going to a Catholic school. I think
Yeah.
if you look at our demographics now, that proves that statistic wrong. I mean, our demographics in Catholic schools now, especially in Florida with these state scholarships, which hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about, has given the opportunity for anyone basically who wants a Catholic education to get a Catholic education. So our demographics have changed substantially. John is a Corpus Christi alum,
proud Cougar.
that if you were to look back even at your time, which wasn't that long ago at our school, our demographics have changed drastically.
Really? Yeah.
And which is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I walk around our little school and I look at the diversity present there, not just racially and ethnically, but also socioeconomically. And I'm proud. I mean, absolutely proud that we can provide a Catholic education to so many students who may not be able to get it otherwise. So I think what a Catholic education does, it instills that drive to be what God wants you to be, everything that God wants you to be. And in our modern world, college kind of gives you those opportunities. In the past, maybe not as much so, but today it's almost, you almost have to have that to have the best opportunities to do whatever God wants you to do in the best way possible. So doesn't mean that it is the path for everybody, but to be able to serve this world in the best way possible, that is kind of the path that most have to take nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, for the second reason thing, it's like, just by being in a Catholic school, you're raising the standard for this student. No matter what environment you grew up in, no matter what your background is, no matter what's going on around you, the standard of the room that you're in is now higher. It just is. That's how Catholic education works.
Right.
Seems like there's a lot of the structure there. Because, home life, ideally there's structure there, but when those kids get dropped off, I think that structure is going to help a lot with that development piece of it.
It absolutely does. The structure, and I think it goes beyond even the structure. It goes back to this Christ-centered environment, the idea that you are a beautiful, incredible child of God, and that's what we want you to be. I'm a major Blue Bloods fan. I don't know if you've ever watched it, but Frank Reagan, the commissioner, the Tom Selleck character, he's got this great quote that I just love and I use all the time, but it's, you know who you are, be that. And so for our Catholic school kids, I just love this quote because that's what we try to, this is who you are. So now go on and be that and be the best version of that you can be, because that's what's going to do you proud in the eyes of God, basically. That's who we want you to be. So it's the structure, it's the discipline, but it's also the belief that we see who you are. So now we're going to help you be the very best version of yourself that you can be.
And I think that's a really good lead in to this third point of, by being involved in Catholic education, you are involved in a higher standard of behavior.
Correct.
I mean, at least one thing that my family would always joke about was, like, at least in a Catholic school, like, you can get expelled. It's like in a public school, at a certain point, it's like, I guess this kid started 3 fights this week. Darn. Whereas, like, this behavioral aspect.
Right. And in a public school, again, I feel sad sometimes because their hands are tied. They're really tied. And, in a Catholic school, again, we will go to the ends of the earth, to do the very best we can to help any child, and I've seen my peers do this. We talk about this, we have conversations about this when we may be facing a tough situation. How do you handle, what would you do? What would you do? And we talk to each other about it. And, you do your best. We will give every opportunity to a child to fix something. Hey, you've messed up. We all messed up. Hey, we're all sinners. We all mess up at times. So here's your opportunity. We're going to ask you to do better. We need you to do better because these are our expectations, and we're not going to lower our expectations for you. You need to kind of fix this. And so, there may be a second time when, hey, okay, we talked about this. Now, this hasn't been fixed. And so, we do have an end, though. We do have an end point where we've said, we love you, we care about you, but at this point, you're making our environment less than we expect it to be. And so it's impacting our family, it's impacting your fellow students. And so at this point, we're going to say we have to separate. We're going to pray for you. We're going to wish you the best. And we absolutely hope at some point you get it together.
Yeah.
But we have to, think of the whole also, and
I
how is it
imagine
impacting our
that's a very
community.
rare thing too. But
it's rare.
Even the virtue of it being there is like the behavioral standard is
Right.
higher. And also, as you were talking about this, something that came to mind is like by being in a Catholic school, you're able to offer a much more holistic and correct insight into what bad behavior means.
Right.
Whereas in a non-Catholic school, even a private school, but it's not Catholic, it's kind of just like you did this behavior and our school has this rule and therefore you can't do that thing. Right. Whereas within the Catholic viewpoint, one, you have a basis for these rules.
Correct.
You're like, oh no, this is disruptful. Like this is disrupting. There's these things, like we have a baseline for this, an eternal baseline. And also in terms of the discipline, there's a very clear teaching to the students that is consistent of correction with love that it's much harder to convey in a public school. All you can ever do is slap the wrist. In a Catholic school, you can actually properly express the child a Christ-like care for their betterment.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we do as administrators in Catholic schools. We try real hard to do that. I'm not going to tell you I've never been angry because there has been behavior that has made me angry. Especially if it hurts another person but to take that and explain why, and that's what I try to do as an administrator, that, hey, I am angry and I don't shy away from letting you know I am angry and this is why. You have hurt somebody. You have really crossed that line. You've disappointed me. But to do it in a way that shows I love you, I love you, I care about you, and I want better for you and I expect better for you. That's where it should always come from. And I hope, I pray that as an administrator, that's where it comes from my standpoint, that I love you and I care about you. And this is why I want better for you.
Yeah. And it makes the correction, I'm sure, so much more potent that it holds you to a way better standard rather than just being like, you're wrong, go to detention and don't do it tomorrow.
Correct.
Whereas it's like, no, like you're a child of God. You did something wrong. You still have to there's a punishment for this, but also like you hold them to this higher standard, and by almost presuming this higher standard, that's true, but by presenting it, the kid now has shoes to fill that actually means something.
Correct.
Not just like it seems more arbitrary of just like you went on your phone, you're not supposed to do that, don't do it tomorrow. Which time is like you went on your phone, you weren't supposed to, but you're made for greatness, you're made in the image and likeness of God, and you have big shoes to fill, and like he made you for these things. You have his grace, you have the Holy Spirit, and now as a student, you're more motivated to do better in the future because you have something to strive for.
I agree. And I think it is, and I think back about my own parents and how, I certainly wasn't a perfect child. However, I do remember, you look shocked that I wasn't a perfect child.
I mean, definitely a perfect child.
I was not a perfect child. But
I won't tell your students. I won't mention it to the school.
I do remember my fear was not of discipline from my parents, when I made mistakes. My fear was of disappointing them. And I think about that even now as an adult, my fear would always be to be off that path that God has laid out for me. That's where my I don't want to disappoint God. I didn't want to disappoint my parents. And I think about that for my students. That's kind of what I would like. I don't want them to be afraid of me or even necessarily the discipline or the punishment, but to feel that connection to family and to expectation that I would not want to disappoint. I would not want to disappoint my principal. I would not want to disappoint my teacher. I would not want to disappoint my parents. That I want my behavior to be worthy of appreciation. And so, and to always come back and to do that with love, and that's the foundation of everything, to help them understand that this is not because we just want rules to torment you. We love you and we want the very best for you.
Yeah, it reminds me, and this is maybe a little bit of a tangent, but I saw this video last night of a preacher, and he was like, yeah, like my relationship with my wife, like I might get home and she'll be like, oh, I'm really tired. Like I don't really want to have to do the dishes tonight. Can you do the dishes? And I'll ask her, or like, is this something you'd divorce me over? And she goes, no. And he was like, oh, okay, I don't want to do it then. Huh. And this is a leading thing. And then she comes home. She's like, I'm really tired. I don't want to have to do the laundry. Can you do the laundry? He says, are you going to divorce me over this? She says, no. Like, of course not. It's the laundry. He goes, oh, then I don't want to do it. And he goes, of course I don't treat my wife like this, but how often do we treat God like that? How often do we think like, oh, is this a mortal sin, or is this just like I shouldn't do it?
Right.
Like, are you going to punish me? Oh, then I don't care. And I think it's easy to have that mindset in a secular world of like, oh, am I going to get punished for this? Then I'm going to do what I want to do. But in a Catholic school, in the Catholic lens, it's like, I won't get punished for it, but will I express my love? Then I want to express my love.
Right.
And it holds you to this different. It's no longer just like, oh, are you going to divorce me? Oh, am I going to get attention? Am I going to get punished? It's more like, oh, are you going to be proud of me? Oh, is this going to uphold what I learned in religion class today? There's a way higher goal to strive for.
Right. And I think that's a question I use a lot. It's like, is this who you're called to be? So I use that for myself, but I also use it for students every once in a while. So tell me in this behavior that we're talking about, is this really who you think you're called to be? And so, especially for the older kids, it can get them thinking about that a little bit. And of course, inevitably, the answer is no. Yeah. You're right. That's not who I'm called to be.
Yeah. And that, again, a question like that can only come from a faculty that is focused on the betterment of the student, which kind of brings us to this fourth point of yours of the faculty and staff at a Catholic school. So
different. I have to tell you, I really do believe so different. And again, this isn't, to talk poorly about anybody who works in other private schools or in public schools, because there are some really good, dedicated teachers. But there is something different about a Catholic school teacher, and I think it's because they are allowed to love. They're allowed to love in God's name. They're allowed to love in a different way. It's not just I care about you, but it is I love you wholeheartly. Mind, body, and soul. I love who you are, and I want the best for you. And they are dedicated and committed in a way that is totally different. And of course, I think I've got the very best faculty and staff of any Catholic school principal. Oh, I mean, I do. And I hope everybody feels that way about their faculty and staff. But to see the dedication and the overall belief in mission, in ministry, and this isn't a job. They are living out their vocational call versus I'm just doing a job. And, we're getting better about it now, where our salaries are a little bit closer to what public school teachers are making. We're getting better about that now. We're working real hard on that. But in the past, that was one of the things, teachers knew they were going to be making less in a Catholic school, and they didn't care because they knew there were benefits to working in Catholic school that go beyond the financial benefits. And you can see that the care, the commitment, is just you can't compare it to any other staff that I've seen in any other job anywhere.
We have, with Studio 316 being all over the place, we have a lot of conversations, and you start to see patterns. whether it's for a particular principal pattern, a characteristic from a teacher, certain things that they do. One of which is when we get to know a principal and their educational journey, or a teacher. It's common that we hear, I was in private, I left public because of money. And then I came back. And it's every time. Why? Oh, Jesus. Oh, it's Jesus. Because the most important thing that I want to be able to bring these kids, I can't on the public side. So to be able to have that, to be rooted in that, no doubt is making a big difference, not only amongst culturally your school, but the kids. Mm-hmm. The kids are going to feed off of that. 100%.
Exactly. Yeah, and you see that in every aspect. When in a public school, when a parent dies or a grandparent dies, what do? Oh, I'm so sorry, Johnny. In a Catholic school, we're praying with and for that child and for that family. When a family is suffering, we had the hurricanes. We had some families who lost their homes, who were suffering, and to be able to respond in a godly way. Mm-hmm. This isn't just a temporal way. We're wanting to help you spiritually, physically. We want to be there for you, but most importantly, we're going to be praying for you every step of the way. To do that overtly, it can't happen in other situations, and I think that's what our teachers love. They love to be able to say, what would Jesus do too? It is an easy way to kind of refocus behavior, or just to refocus anything that's going on in the classroom. That, hey, let's bring it back to why we're here. And
that's great.
I've heard that over and over myself. That I can't imagine working in an environment where God was not allowed to be recognized.
Yeah, I mean, even think too, like,
especially to consider you're teaching children.
Correct.
Talk about like the fertile soil, like it's right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just adding on to that, to think the disservice that so many children have. I mean, when you think about the lack, it could almost make you sad, right? So many kids are being raised in this environment where they don't even know the reality of God. They're not even able to be able to recognize that or feel that presence, or understand that there is this reality, there is this truth. And we have the great gift of being able to do that each and every day. Oh my gosh, why would you not want to be in a Catholic school?
And this idea of like being a teacher, wanting to be in a Catholic school so that you can love your students in the context of Christ. I mean, you guys are both parents. As a kid even, I can't imagine a world where I couldn't love my parents, or you guys couldn't love your kids in the context of your faith. Right. Imagine if tomorrow someone told you, yo, like, Shevin, you can't like you can't tell Michael, let's go pray. Like, you're
that's so foreign to me. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
But the thought of it is like, wait, but that's such a that as Catholics, that's how we love. Like, I love this person through sharing my faith. I love my parents. One of the ways I do that is through talking about the faith, through praying with them, through praying for them. Is like, to put yourself in the shoes of, like, we're not Catholic educators, so it might be hard to think about a world where I have to love a student without the faith.
Sure.
And it's like, by putting it in the context of, like, imagine if I had to love a family member without my faith. It's like, what? Like, there's no amount there. And then you talk about, like, oh, I couldn't imagine giving up the money to go be a Catholic school teacher. It's like, I would give any amount of money if someone told me I had to pay to love me. If I had to give up some money so I could love my family members through the context of Christ, yeah, what's it going to take?
Right.
Anything.
Right.
It's the non-negotiable.
But think about, I mean, and I think that goes back to the sadness that you think about that, maybe that's, the symptom, maybe that's the lack that we see in our world today, the lack of resilience in our kids, and the lack that's there, that it's really hard to operate in this world without a spiritual life, without faith, without belief.
Totally. This world's nuts.
And people try it all the time. And I just sit back and I shake my head. I'm like, I cannot even imagine. I want to do whatever. I did whatever I could to give it to my own kids. And then at some point it's up to you. You got to take it. You go, you're an adult now, you've got to take it. And I hope you're passing that on to your own kids. But I want to do whatever I can for all of these kids who are in our schools to help pass that along to them, to help give them that that solid foundation, that belief, that truth that there is something bigger than me. You know, I am not the end all be all. And I think that's what our world tries to teach them these days. And can you imagine? No, I can't imagine. I can't imagine living my life.
Thought.
No, I can't imagine. You know, we recently, dealt with the loss of my mother, which was, of course, devastating. But at the same time, I can celebrate with my kids because we know, oh my gosh, grandma's at peace. She is not feeling any pain any longer. And as sad as we are, we can laugh and love and have joy because, oh my gosh, she's in heaven with Poppy now, I mean, how can you not give that to your kids, that reality, that truth? And that's what I want our students to have too.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Let that sink in.
Wow. Yeah. No, it's a very interesting perspective when you look at it through the light, because I don't know, when you look at it through the lens of trying to raise my child without Jesus, and I can't even wrap my head around that at all. But if you take that responsibility, I know it's maybe not second, but it could be second or third, but helping a child develop in general, whether it's mentally, academically, spiritually, but that spiritual development, there's still, I guess what I'm saying is there's a spiritual development in being a parent. And there's also a spiritual development at a kid at a Catholic school. So when you mentioned it like that, I'm like, all right, well, there's no doubt there's great public schools. We're not throwing shade on that piece of it. But that's the denominator, man. It's like, how can you begin to help cut these kids through, to help cut through it and help them realize this is the answer. This is what you're going to lean on. Because it's going to, because things will definitely get difficult.
Yeah, and, again, you're right. There are great public schools, but I'm sorry, I've got to say without apology, there is something missing. There will always be something missing if you cannot acknowledge the presence of God, in that environment, in that institution, in that school, whatever it is. There will always be something missing in the relationships that are there, in just the standards that are there. There will always be something missing. And so to be given this great gift of being involved in Catholic education and helping parents. I think that it's an incredible challenge sometimes because parents aren't always right there with you, even though they may be sending their kids to Catholic school. But to be able to assist them and partner with them, and sometimes even be that bridge for parents to kind of understand, okay, what does this mean for my life too? It's an incredible gift, and it's an incredible responsibility, but I feel honored and privileged to have been given this gift as a principal.
With you mentioning about the parents not being there sometimes. Okay, so we had a conversation with superintendent in the Northeast, and he said he's been doing this for about 17 or 18 years. He said parents used to send their kids to school, Catholic schools, for 3 reasons. They teach the faith, the academic rigor, which were your first 2 points, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And the third is safety. And he says he feels like in his experience, it's the same 3 reasons, but they're in reverse. It's safety, the academic rigor, and they teach the faith. What have you seen in regards to parental involvement in their kids' faith life? Has there been a drop? If so, is there anything that you could attribute to that? And there's probably also a world where you're seeing kids bring the faith home to their parents. And I know it could be different with, depends where the school's at. I get all that because I'm sure there's Catholic hot pockets, but I'm just curious to know your thoughts on that piece.
Yeah, I think the reality is, again, statistically speaking, fewer people are going to church. They're going fewer are going to church on Sunday, fewer are going to Mass. And so to pretend like I know all the reasons for that, I'd be lying. But I do believe that there is a little bit of a disconnect for parents nowadays. I do think that the world is just speaking a little bit more loudly to them than other things. And, I think it is our job in the Catholic schools for those students who are with us to not only be focused necessarily on the kids, but to be focused on the families too, because, that child comes to us from that family. And we are sometimes, that Catholic school sometimes is the way back to the faith, or is the way to a deeper faith for those families.
Amen.
Shevin, I always say that, again, the world speaks more loudly. So when parents are making their list of priorities, sometimes, it is academics. Sometimes, a lot of times, it is sports. Sports speak very loudly in today's world, and sports and dance and those kind of extracurricular things, music, those things that speak real loudly to parents, because they get this great sense of pride when their children do well at these things. And I say we've done a really great job of convincing people how much God loves them. We have. Yeah. So people firmly believe if I miss Mass on Sunday, God's still going to love me, which is true, right? It is true. It is. So I think we've done a really great job on that. And so I think they look at it sometimes as God will still love me, but my coach may not. My child's coach may not. My child's dance teacher may not let them. So I do think I think they're challenged with the world, and I think they're busy. I think they're tired. I think there are a lot of reasons for all of that. But I like to believe internally, even if they don't fully recognize it, I still think Jesus is priority one. I really do. I think sometimes there's not that external recognition of it, but I think that it's on their heart, it's there, and they may not verbally be able to represent that, to anybody else, but I think it is there. And I think sometimes it is our job as a Catholic school to just remind them about that, remind them how important this is for their child's life and their child's lifetime, their child's eternity, to remind them of these things. And I think they do get it sometimes. I do think that we are that path back sometimes for a lot of families.
I was talking to the principal, and on this particular subject, and he said, I think that they do want to teach the kids the faith. Like, that's sincere. In his summary, he said, I think parents sometimes feel like they're not equipped to teach the faith, and that's where the Catholic school comes in. Like, these are the experts. These are the people that'll teach you the faith. And he was like, and I would just want to tell them that loving Jesus can be messy. I just thought that was a very important point. It's like, as the parent, you don't got to have all the answers. You're gonna mess up, but just showing them that, things can get a little messy. This is gonna be an imperfect process.
Right.
But I'm gonna try my best to try to teach you the faith. But I thought that was just a little interesting way in his little assessment of like the care is there.
Exactly.
It's not like they're going to a Catholic school.
Right.
But maybe they feel like there's not a particular tool in their tool bag, so then they're like, all right, well, the school can teach them that. But
exactly. We don't let somebody who knows what they're doing do it. Exactly. And I do see that. You can say the same thing about math homework, right? I mean, you don't know yet, but there will come a time when, you're like, go see your teacher. I can't help you with this. And I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right when it comes to learning about the faith. I think parents sometimes they get a little overwhelmed because they feel like they don't know for sure. So we do try to bridge that gap and say, just be faithful. First and foremost, just be faithful to the process, and ultimately it will come. Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest ways to solidify this recognition that, like, I want to teach my kid the faith. Jesus is the most important thing, but God will love me if I miss Mass, or I don't feel equipped, or any of these things. I think one of the best ways to actualize that desire is through the community of a Catholic school. This fifth point to touch on, that through having a community of other parents, of other teachers, of your principal, of your school sports, of your school dance team, your school music, all of a sudden the entire community points towards the faith, even in a way that's unspoken. A room full of people who unspokenly care about Jesus, eventually, like, the other shoe is going to drop. Like, eventually the glass is going to shatter that, like, oh wait, we all care about this. We need to, like, do something about it. You can't be isolated for so long when you're all on the same page of that. And I'm sure that's why the community matters so much of a Catholic school.
Exactly. Community is huge. And I think most Catholic schools will tell you, well, when they're doing their tours, they're doing those things, they'll say, oh, and we're like a family here. It is what we talk about, but it is true. It really, truly is true. Because parental involvement in a Catholic school is not just wanted, it's expected. So, there are parent service hours that parents are required to do. And it's not the point to just make parents do stuff for the school because we need your hours. We need your, it is to continue to create that community, to care for one another, to love for one another, to know one another, because it's real hard to do all of those other things if we don't know one another. And so that expectation that we are all in this together. The church teaches parents are first and foremost the first educators of their child. We as a Catholic school, we are partners with the family, with the parents. And so that's how we like to kind of promote it. We're your partners. But as your partners, we have expectations for you. You have expectations for us, and we have to do this all together. So community is huge. And you see that in Catholic schools constantly. You see it as, from Catholic school as we reach out to help one another when we're in need. But within the Catholic school itself, there's never a need unanswered. There's never a time when, the parents aren't stepping forward to say, hey, let me help you with that. From the most menial task to, hey, we've got some big stuff going on with a family. What can we do to help? It is part of who we are. That community is absolutely to the very core of who we are.
Yeah, it's just we're communal creatures. Like, as even outside of just Catholic schools, as Catholics, community is such a cornerstone of what we do that it's like to have that in your school, again, seems like a non-negotiable. It seems crazy to not have a community of other parents, of other students, of other like-minded people. Like, just to not have that is so foreign.
Right. To your, specifically to your generation, and maybe even mine, but for generations past, it's kind of a different mentality today than it was in the past, because prayer in and of itself used to be thought of as a very individual thing. And so, and I don't know, I'm not going to say if it was a Vatican II thing or when kind of that different thinking came in, but to teach that we are very communal, we are. Everybody has to have their personal prayer life, but we are a community, and it's expected that we pray in community. It's expected that we love in community, that we do all of these things together. And so sometimes that idea of community is a little foreign to some people because they haven't learned that along the way. And so it is part of our approach to always remind people, we are a community. We're here for one another. And there are expectations when, of one another when we're in this community always. Yeah.
As we're coming up on time here, one thing that strikes me I'm going to kind of recap these points a little bit, but every single thing here touches on the first and foremost point that we started the podcast with, that being in a Catholic school means that it is Christ-centered and it is Catholic. Every other benefit that we listed, the source of that benefit was that it's Catholic. It's like such a baseline, almost like it's so grand scale, it's obvious, of like the benefit is that it's Catholic. And the rest of these benefits we listed flow from that. That because it's Catholic, you have a higher standard for education, and your students do better because they know what they're called to. You have a higher standard for behavior because the correction is more holistic and based off of loving one another. You have a stronger community because it's necessary for our faith. And you have a faculty that loves the students because they know the lens through which they are teaching. That every single benefit we get from a Catholic school flows from one thing, and that is God, that is Jesus Christ, that is the Trinity. Like that is what it all flows from. And from that we get these five things or these four other things, but the five total things that make Catholic education so important that we can kind of touch on it during Catholic Schools Week this week. Give glory to it. By doing this, like we're giving glory to God through sharing what's so good about this gift he's given us of Catholic education.
Absolutely. And this long legacy, this long legacy of Catholic education. We're not the first ones to do this. We're not going to be the last ones to do this, and you think about those early, saints, especially those early American saints who said, hey, there's a need for this. And they put the work in. And I think about every Catholic school, especially, in our area here, that someone at some point stepped up and said, we need a school, we need a Catholic school. And all of those generations before who put into play what was necessary to build that school and to keep it going. And, incredibly, we're at this point now where Catholic schools are available to more people because of, we're a choice state and all of these things that more and more Catholic kids can get a Catholic education than ever before. And what a beautiful thing. What a beautiful legacy that we are just a part of for hopefully,
That's great.
hopefully generations to come.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, consider this your 45 to 50-minute sales pitch for Catholic education.
There you go. I could
It
talk
doesn't
all
get much
day.
better.
I could talk all
It doesn't
day
get
about
much
Catholic
better.
education for sure.
Yeah.
For
But
sure.
thank you so much for coming on.
No,
I'm
thank
very
you.
appreciative. Happy Catholic Schools Week to you and everyone watching on the Friday of Catholic Schools Week. So kind of still one more day of Catholic Schools Week. Thank you as always to Shevin for coming on as well. Thank you first and foremost for wearing your leather jacket.
I get that.
It's a beautiful
that's the love of
thing.
Christ
I get that
flowing
a lot.
forth.
It has
Yeah.
changed my world. I
Yeah,
just want you to know.
yeah, it's a new
I am
lens.
leaving here a different person today because of
Because
that
of my
leather
jacket.
jacket.
Because of that
Yes,
leather
yes,
jacket.
for sure.
I get that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a thing that kind of
Yeah,
happens.
just- it's
Yeah.
part of the
Did you
process.
have him as a student?
I did not. No, I did
years
not.
after.
No, I did not.
But
But
Mo did, right? Miss Doherty?
Yes.
she did.
Okay.
Yeah. But I will claim him as mine because
Yeah, I'm okay
again,
with
part
that.
of the legacy.
The
we
community.
are
I'm okay
part
with
of
that.
that
Yeah.
Corpus Christi
Yeah,
legacy,
exactly.
John. So
Exactly.
all together,
Yeah.
no time. Time does not exist in that legacy.
One thing we do to close out the podcast, as you may have seen when we recorded Maureen's, we're all going to clap at the same time. It's a little more coordinated for 3 people, but we are out.